Wolves and tigers did in fact eat berries, and they eat berries and grasses and the contents of their animal's prey, animal's stomach, which is vegan usually. So again, there are a lot of problems that actually do go away when we eliminate meat from the diet. You see things like allergies, as I mentioned, with patches. A lot of the allergies went away. A lot of skin allergies seem to go away. Behavioral issues. Lots of people tell me that when they switch their animals to a vegan diet, they're calmer, that they're less reactive, that they just seem to have a more peaceful nature. It can be hard to quantify that in real hard scientific terms, but certainly there's a lot of adrenaline, a lot of stress going on with the wild animals, with the animals when they're killed for meat, and a lot of us who make the choice to be vegan, we're worried about incorporating that into our own bodies and our own energy. Obesity is something that can be addressed more easily with a diet. This is one way to approach it. It's easier to feed a lower calorie diet when you're upping the amount of vegetables and fruits and maybe some grains and reducing some of the fatter meats. And just eliminating the toxins from the animals that are raised for food in our system. The hormones and antibiotics and the pesticides that they consume in their grains. It's just great to think about getting that out of your companion animal diets as well. So if you're going to feed a vegan diet, what do you feed? I'm a really big believer that fresh food diet is far and away the best food that we can feed them. For all the same reasons that you and I like to eat fresh food. Fresh food is also better for the animals. If you go out and you buy the very best quality packaged food you can find and feed that every day. I know when I grew up, the teaching was that you find one food and you feed that forever, because if you change it, they're going to get sick. Well, that's like finding a really good breakfast cereal. Go to the co-op, get the best one you can find, and eat it every day for all of your meals for the rest of your life. After a while, you're really going to want a piece of spinach or something. You crave something more. We need variety, we need the freshness that comes in fresh foods, and our animals are the same. So many problems that I talk to people about go away just by changing to a fresh food diet. So I think that's a really important place to start in thinking about what to feed. You get optimum nutrition from fresh food. The packaged food is so heavily processed that a lot of the nutrients are gone. You don't have the vital energy that comes in fresh food. The biggest factor, one of the single most important ingredient, I think, in any diet is variety. Because no two animals are the same, and no single animal is the same from 1 week or 1 month to the next. You buy a packaged food that says this is nutritionally complete, but Tila doesn't have the same requirements as your dog or your cat or your dog. They're all different. So to assume that one packaged food is going to be good for everybody isn't really realistic. And their needs change. Some days they're more stressed. Maybe they've been exposed to a virus and their immune system needs to kick in. Maybe they're aging. Their needs change. So when you feed a variety of foods, when the foods change from day to day or week to week, their bodies have an opportunity to draw the nutrients that they need specifically from different food sources. If they have only one food source, their options are limited. If they have many sources, they can draw whatever nutrients they need. There are a lot of things. Feeding a fresh food diet also gives you a lot of flexibility. So if you have a few animals in your house and one has a weight problem and another one doesn't, you can monitor that. You can put more vegetables in the bowl for the one who has a weight problem. You can add some vitamin C or some echinacea if they've been exposed to kennel cough or something. So it just gives you a lot more flexibility to adapt to their needs. It doesn't have to be hard. A lot of people feel like, I hardly have time to cook for myself. How am I going to cook for my dog? It really doesn't have to be difficult. There are a lot of things that you can do to make it really, really simple. We're going to talk about some of those a little bit later on in more detail. So again, what should I feed? What goes in that bowl? Variety is number one. Whatever you feed today, feed something different next week or tomorrow or 2 days from now. There are 4 basic components that need to go in the bowl. You need a protein source, for most animals. Not all, like this Tila I'll tell you about. She has very, very low protein needs. If she gets very much protein at all, she's bouncing off of the walls. This is one of the ways you can accommodate. But generally they need some protein source, carbohydrate source, vegetables and fruits, lots of vegetables and fruits, and some kind of fatty acids. We're going to talk about what kind of sources you can use for those in a minute. If you do feed meat, if you're feeding a fresh food diet and you feed meat, you do need to supplement with calcium. If you're feeding a vegan diet, you don't need to do that, because it's all basically about the calcium-phosphorus ratio. Meats are very high in phosphorus, and so when you're feeding meat, you need to balance that with calcium. If you're not feeding meat, that's not an issue. There's plenty of calcium in the greens and vegetables that you're feeding. If you're feeding a vegan diet, you do need to supplement, especially for cats. I can't emphasize this enough. If you're feeding a cat a vegan diet, you absolutely have to supplement. It's very essential. Cats are at risk for retinal degeneration. They can actually go blind. We see cats going into the vet clinic with blindness, and it turns out they've been on a vegan diet, in some cases, a vegan diet without supplementation. It really is necessary. They are true carnivores, and so that we do need to help them out and give them some supplements. You can do it, and they can be healthy and do fine, but you just need to be aware of that. Dogs, it's a little bit less clear that they absolutely need it, so it's good insurance. There are some dogs that do fine without the supplementation, but it's just really good insurance, so you know that they're getting everything they need. The major supplements you need are taurine and carnitine. We're going to talk about those a little bit more too. But you just need to be aware that that is necessary. You want to rotate it. I'd like to rotate among different nutrition boosters, we call them. Things like probiotics, just extra things to beef up the nutrient value. Probiotics, nutritional yeast, wheat germ, spirulina, blue-green algae, things like that, to just round out the profile and give them other things to draw their energy from. Vitamin mineral supplement is good insurance too. Not necessary, especially if you're feeding good organic, fresh food, but it's a good insurance policy to throw that in, especially if you think your animal is looking a little bit off, or maybe the energy isn't quite what you think it should be. Tila, I don't give her vitamins. I think she's doing fine. She has plenty of energy for 2 or 3 of us. But she also eats almost all organic food and plenty of it. So, here's a rough idea of the proportions of the different components that you want to feed. Now again, this is a place where every animal is different. As I mentioned, I don't generally add a protein source. Most every food has protein in it. She eats rice. There's a good amount of protein in rice. Kale has lots of protein in it. So all the fruits and vegetables that you feed are going to have some protein component. But when I talk about a protein element, people who feed meat, that's obviously their source. For people who are going for a vegan diet, we're talking about tofu, tempeh, beans, lentils, nut butters, things like that. But the proportions are going to vary. Cats need higher levels of proteins than dogs do in general. But it's a matter of starting from kind of a middle range, and then watching your animal and seeing how they respond. They'll tell you so much. You know, how their energy level is, how their coat looks, how their teeth look. They're going to tell you if they're doing really well or not. So about roughly, for most dogs, 30 to 60% protein, 30 to 60% carbohydrate, 10 to 30% minimum vegetables. Don't be afraid of pounding the vegetables. And they're great treats. Tila loves to have a snack on a carrot or an apple. That's a big treat. Bananas. There's pretty much every fruit. I go to the co-op now. I got into this habit, and I don't have the heart to stop it, where every time I come out of the co-op, she gets some kind of fruit. When the strawberries were in season, they were so good, and she loves strawberries. I'd give her a couple strawberries when I get to the car. She's waiting for me, and so now she looks for something. There's no strawberries, so now it's bananas that she gets. So fruits and vegetables, they're as good for them as they are for us. Again, if you're feeding a meat-based diet, you need to add the calcium, fats, some kind of fatty acid, canola oil, olive oil, flaxseed, borage oil, all good choices. Nutritional boosters, vitamin mineral supplement, and your taurine and carnitine. Nutritional boosters, things like nutritional yeast and spirulina are also potential sources of vitamin B12, which can be hard to get in a vegan diet. So making the transition, here are some of the things that you can, replacements you can make. Your protein sources when you're eating those. Carbohydrate sources, that's pretty easy. Rice, quinoa, also a good source of protein. Potatoes, squash, barley, all those kinds of things. If you're feeding an animal who does have a higher protein requirement, you probably need to feed more when it's a plant-based protein than if it's meat, because the percentage of protein in most plant sources is not as high as in meat. So if you were used to feeding your dog, say for 50% meat, 50% or 30% carbohydrate, you might want to up the protein sources of plant-based. Supplement with taurine and carnitine. Taurine usually comes from an animal source, which is why it's hard to get it in a vegan diet. But there are many sources of vegan protein, taurine available on the market. You just need to read labels and check your sources. There's a synthetic taurine that is, and it's also can be derived from seaweed. So you just need to read your sources. B supplement or spirulina nutritional yeast or most multivitamins have your B12 in it. And variety. Don't forget the variety. Now there's something called that veterinarians identify as diet drift. And it's about starting out with a really good strategy for what you're going to feed. Lots of variety, good fresh foods, proper supplementation. But you get into a routine and you get busy and you find, it's just so easy to put in tofu and rice and broccoli, and I know what I'm doing, I can do it in my sleep, and it's there and it's ready. And so then all of a sudden you realize it's been months, and you've been feeding taurine, and you've been feeding, tofu and rice and broccoli, and I ran out of my taurine a few months ago, and I haven't gotten around to getting it. Or isn't carrying that vegetarian source I had. And all of a sudden you're feeding a diet that isn't as carefully planned. Your variety is gone, your supplementation is off, and your animal is not going to do as well. It's very, very common to just sort of drift into something that's not as optimum. So it's really important when you're taking over those choices that you keep the variety, keep the supplements going, and just be aware, review it all the time to make sure you're still on top of it.